Hi, everyone. I'm just going to record a little bit of a movie for you and looking forward to talking just a few minutes about transition. And I know that you're in a leadership course and it's one of your senior courses. So that's absolutely wonderful. Congratulations. You'll be graduating soon. And I hope that you find the information provided in both the link to Nursing the Future and in the component of that chapter on sort of what the transition experience might be like, particularly that initial 4 months, which I've coined transition shock. And so I thought I would just introduce you a little bit to the stages of transition. So, transition shock is situated within that first stage of transition, which you will start really after orientation, because orientation is truly part of the extension of your being a student because you're still in the learning role, and it's a safe place. And I think once orientation is done, your feelings of, oh, sorry, I just realized I have music on in the background. Um, I think you'll start to get that sense of ownership of your role, and with that comes a sense of responsibility and some challenges related to that. So that's expected. So what I wanted to do, and I've got some slides in front of me just to remind me and keep me on track, is that you're going into a work role and a workforce that is very dynamic. It's intense, and the experience that you're having transitioning is not just about your work, it's about you as a person. So it's your personal life. It's the physicality of going to work and working for 12 hours. It's the fact that your circadian rhythm might not be a day rhythm or a night rhythm. And if you're working days or nights, then maybe that isn't working for you. So it's physical as well. It's cultural because you have been in the role of a student and you know your student colleagues and your faculty colleagues, and now you don't know the workforce that you're going into. So if you are able to do a senior practicum on the unit where you're going to take employment, that's desired and recommended, because then you get to know those people, you get to know where things are at, because it's a physical space that you're working in, that if you don't know what that space is about and you've never been there, you literally can't find a dressing tray. And I say dressing tray, so let's just address that. The majority of new graduates make their original transition into the workplace in acute care, and that's just because that's where the jobs are available, that's where you can get casual work, that's where the majority of people um, come out of into community and public health full-time work. So it may be that you're in a casual position in the public health or community health network, but not full-time. So in order to get the hours, you have to work in acute care as well. And acute care, I think, is just less forgiving when it comes to the transition. And my transition framework came out of acute care, and that's primarily because that's where grads go. So I wanted to make sure that we hit the nail on the head when it came to that. So acute care is a service delivery model that's not necessarily focused on the patient or the family. It's really centered around the institution, and this idea of flow, as I'm sure you've heard a lot about. Flow is very important, and it is in the community as well, but the community has a little bit more latitude when it comes to putting the brakes on flow, and the acute care centers don't have that. So when you have a patient in the emergency room, I take myself as the manager of a cardiology and cardiothoracic surgery unit, which I just came out of, and I think to myself, when I had a patient in the emergency room that needed to come to my unit, a lot of urgency about that, and you could feel it. You could feel it from everyone. You've got to get your patients out so we can get this patient up from the emergency room. And there was this ongoing urgency, and I think that's a hard thing for new nurses, or any nurses, quite frankly, and managers to deal with. It's because when you're in a sense of urgency, you're rarely making the best decisions that you can make, and you're not necessarily, you know, spending time and thinking, I wanted to think about what that patient was saying, and I'm wondering how that family is doing. You don't have time for that. I mean, it's just boom, 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 go, go, go. Next, next, next. And I think that that's a sad part of acute care, but it is a reality that I think influences the transition experience of the new nurse. So when you think about that and the energy that that requires, you need to recognize that energy consumption is probably going to be higher than energy input for you. And I say that because this is a this position is not a comfortable feeling. It's that feeling of being in between places. So you're no longer a student, but you don't really feel like a nurse. So you're in between, and it takes a lot of energy to maintain feet in both places. So until you make a decision, and you will, to move both your feet into the role of the professional practicing nurse, you're going to feel that tension. And it's okay, it's normal. Just let it go, let it happen. And you will ultimately make the decision to move your feet, because your feet, you can just kind of have that visual where your feet are getting further and further apart as your roles get further and further apart. And you distinguish, oh, that is not the role of a student, that's a role of a nurse. And you make much more clear delineations between who you were as a student and who you need to be as a nurse. And so you're like, I either fall through this cavern, or I choose to move my foot over into that camp. And you will do that. It's just everyone has a different timing for that. So that usually happens in the first to second stage. So I kind of just wanted to talk briefly about the stages because I wanted to limit this to a 10-minute video. So when you think about stage one of your transition, and I know that you have the transition model, and so you can refer back to that. I sent the PDFs to the publisher so that you will have both stages and the Schoff model. So as you can see in the stages, there's if you pull it up, you can see there's a yellow piece there. And I just use the yellow, green, red lights. I use them all the time as a teacher. Red being like, whoa, stop. Things are cautious and maybe in crisis. Yellow is more, boy, I'm feeling a little bit unsure here, but not bad. And then green is like, yeah, I feel good. So that's sort of how I depict the transition stages model. So as you can see in orientation, it's yellow because you know something's different, but you're not exactly sure what it is. And that's the caution piece that you feel in orientation, but you don't feel the full weight of the experience until you get into that about, that first month, which is probably right after orientation. Then the full weight of the responsibility comes over you as you are both learning and performing at the same time. And the performing is this feeling like I have to be able to perform, and for some reason we expect that we have to perform at the level of everyone around us, which is ridiculous because they are all experienced nurses. So go easy on yourselves. It's not necessarily appropriate for you to feel that you need to function at a competent or even a beginner, advanced beginner level, according to Benner. You really are a novice at this point. And I think that that's the disconnect, is that you didn't feel like a novice when you graduated. You thought, I could take the world on, and, I've done this, I've done well. And they passed me, so they must think I can do this. Then you get in there and you're like, whoa, I had no idea that it involved all these other things. So those other things are the things that you're going to adjust to and things that you might accommodate. So in this first stage, you're learning the roles of the nurse, and some of them either could not be conferred upon you as a student because legally we can't do that, or B, people were doing them for you and you didn't know. And I try to tell senior nurses, if you're going to do something for the grad, let them know. Or for the student, senior student, let them know, because they don't realize that that's something that ultimately is going to be their responsibility. So those are things that just happen. You may or may not be aware that people were doing these things for you, and then all of a sudden they're not doing them for you. And you're like, wow, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. So just be aware that there will be things like that. And they differ in every area because you've been working with different people. A common accommodating is different than adjusting, because accommodating says that normally I, perhaps would spend time, educating patients on insulin, or teaching them involved aspects of their discharge. And you get into the situation and someone's pushing you and saying, look, you got to have this guy out of this room in 15 minutes. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to teach if I can't teach? That's accommodating. So now you find yourself accommodating a system, and that can feel wrong inside. And it should feel wrong inside, because this tension that goes on between the institution and the profession is one that's age old, and it will go forever, because practicing ideally will never really happen. And maybe it's unrealistic, but practicing to the standard of industry, which is likely that we have priorities that are about our fiscal limitations, and they're not necessarily about the quality of the patient care. They're about safety maybe, but not quality. And you're like, but I'm about quality. I mean, that's why I came into this profession, so that I could do a really good job, and so I could go home at night feeling really good about myself. So you can only go home feeling bad about yourself for so many days. And then you have to let go of some things. And I just want you to be aware, sort of eyes wide open, when you're letting go of things. And you can let go of things every once in a while. Like today was a crazy day. But then when it's a good day, you go back to the standard that you were at when you came out. And the challenge that a lot of people have is that they never go back. Once they let go, once they accommodate, they never actually re-engage in that standard of practice. So just be aware that could happen to you, and you want to guard against it. That's where the soul goes to die. Okay, so and then concealing is a big part of the first stage, because you don't feel confident and comfortable, and you don't want everyone to know how you're feeling. So a lot of times you don't share how you're feeling, so it gets built up in there, and it's boiling, and it feels very uncomfortable, and you feel alone, and you feel like you're the only person who feels that way. So in terms of feeling alone, try to reach out to people in your workplace, people that you think you can trust, and share how you're feeling with them. The other piece of it is get outside of your work if you can. It's hard in that first stage because you're just totally immersed in it. You dream about it, you prepare, you debrief. It's like 24/7 you're working. If you can find a way to remove yourself, whether it's through yoga or exercise or socializing in some fashion with people who maybe aren't in your workplace, or people who are willing to listen to what you need to say because you'll want to talk to people, that would be helpful. At least then you don't conceal in your personal life as well as your professional life. So then at around 3 to 4 months, you start to feel a shift. And this is if you're working, anywhere from half to full time, because you have to get kind of immersed in the culture and immersed in the experience in order to work through that experience. You'll reach the second stage of transition. And what you'll notice about this stage is that it's kind of a whoa, I'm backing up kind of stage. At first you're like in there like a dirty shirt, and you're just focused, and you're just immersed in everything. And then, you start to get accustomed to some of the routines, and you lift your gaze and you're like, oh, wow. I've been through a lot in this last 4 months, and I am really tired. So you do feel a tendency to remove yourself from your life, the environment, and you kind of need a break. It may be that you don't want to spend time with your work buddies all the time, or even with the people that you went to school with. It's because like when you get together, that's all you talk about. And you may feel a sense of saturation at this point. A lot of, questions start to come to you because so much is being revealed that you didn't know was there. And then you start to question it. Wow, is this really what I wanted to do? I didn't know it was going to be like this. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can stay working here. I don't know if this nursing profession is for me the way that it's revealing itself. And so you start to kind of search for some meaning in what you're doing. And And this is the reason why you need to back up. You need to sleep, first of all, because you are very tired. And you need time and energy to process what's been going on and to put it in its proper place. You do need to talk to somebody at this point. So, a good friend, a mentor, hopefully in the workplace that you have managed to connect with. And if you're not set up formally with a mentor, you can get yourself a mentor informally. Just if someone has eye contact with you or you feel like you connect with them, maybe they meet with you for coffee. Or maybe it's someone on another unit. Maybe it's a family member who's a nurse who can understand. And it doesn't you could Skype someone, so it doesn't have to be someone like within your small framework. It can be someone outside of that, but it is helpful. Now, stage also goes for about 3 to 4 months, and you will find you come back in. You probably want to leave for a bit, metaphorically, and then you want to come back in. But now it's on your terms. It's the way that you want to practice, and so that's kind of how you enter the third stage, a comfortable stage because you physically are feeling better. But now what you're starting to see are the big issues going on in the healthcare system. So you're not kind of like myopic that way. You're sort of like grand tour like this. And it's interesting because you see things that you didn't see before. Like, well, this whole flow thing, it doesn't actually meet the needs of the patients and families. And we don't have anywhere to send them in the community that can provide what we should have been providing in acute care. So what's going on about that gap? So things like that start to plague you. They start to bother you. And this is where people start to say, how can I, because work is a marathon. I mean, not work, but a profession. It's a long distance run. It's not a sprint. Whereas you've been sprinting and now you're being asked to change your pace so that you can actually go the distance. And you need to know how you do that. Well, how do I come to work every day and feel like I can commit myself for the rest of my life to this profession? And it can help with that. It's a matter of kind of saying to change that I want to see in the world, Gandhi, and how can I live with the work that I do on a day-to-day basis? How do I reconcile those two? And so there is a bit of separation so that you are not as immersed in what you're doing, but you start to have a personal life. And this is where you can start to pick up hobbies, and you start to have the energy to separate yourself from work when you leave work, which is really important. It's important that we have a balance. And whereas at first you couldn't understand how people could come to work and talk about their children when all you can think about is how am I going to get through this shift. Now, you're talking about what you did on the weekend, and there's a little bit more of a relaxed sense of yourself when you're at work. There's things that you're starting to accept, and I do caution you with this because it has to do with this accommodating that you did in the first stage. If you are now at the point where you just accept that this is the way it is, then you stop fighting for your standards and your values, and that's when things can change for you and slip for you and cause some moral distress around your work. And so just be aware that you can be part of the change in your workplace, and you can respectfully resist and be a power of good and change in the workplace. There are ways to do that. There are committees. There are ways to advocate on behalf of your patients and your profession without losing yourself in the process. So talk to people about what opportunities are there. Sit down with your manager or your educator and talk about how can I be part of enhancing the quality and optimizing the care practices on this unit. And that will make you feel better. And it's part of kind of being part of the system, which is the accepting piece. Remember that you have a whole career ahead of you. So take the time to relax, enjoy your life, recover from this transition experience, and then make definitive decisions about where you want to go in the future. I wish you all the absolute best as you pursue your careers. And don't hesitate to contact me at Nurse in the Future. And wishing you an absolutely wonderful career, which I know it will be. It has been for me tremendously rewarding, tremendously rich.